Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. This is your home for 5-minute Bible study. Well, maybe sometimes we go over 5 minutes, and sometimes maybe we go under 5 minutes, but it's always right around 5 minutes, and I guarantee you it is always baked fresh, just for you. Today we're looking at Psalm 106, and we're looking at verses 21 through 24. Remember, this psalm is really a psalm of penitence. It's not a psalm of praise, but then there are the elements of praise in it, because how can you not see man's condition except for in the light of God's glory? I mean, and His glory is expressed here. He saved them in verse 8, and He gave them their request in verse 15. And then today we're going to see more about the wonderful glory of God, even in the light of their corruption. Well, let's go ahead and read now verses 21 through 24. They forgot God their Savior, which had done great things in Egypt, wondrous works in the land of Ham, terrible things by the Red Sea. Therefore He said that He would destroy them, had not Moses His chosen stood before Him in the breach, to turn away His wrath, lest He should destroy them. Yea, they despised the pleasant land. They believed not His word. Well, boy, that's the last verse we're going to do this week. And doesn't that really just describe the whole condition here? They believed not His word. They did believe His words in 12, because after the deliverance from the Egyptians at the Red Sea, they sang their songs and they believed His words, but now they've not. And even after God has judged them, because He judges them there in 15, He judges them in 17, He judges them because of what happened in 20, in 19 and 20. Verse 21 now tells us that they forget God their Savior. Remember, verses 8, 9, and 10 tells us about the salvation of God there in Egypt and in the Red Sea. So His works in the land of Ham refer to those judgments that He performed upon Pharaoh and all the gods of Egypt. The terrible things by the Red Sea, when He opened it and then closed it on the Egyptians. All of that, they forgot all of that. God was their Savior. He saved them for His name's sake. He saved them from the hand of the man that hated them, from their enemies. And yet they forgot God their Savior. You see, that's what happens when you change the glory of God into that of an ox or some other animal, some other created thing. Romans chapter 1, verse 25 tells us that very clearly, that when we start down that path and we think we're smarter than God and we create our own gods, then the mind starts to go and we forget, because God allows us to forget, because we haven't glorified Him as God. So there's this happening, there's this horrible corruption that takes place, takes hold of the soul. As I said yesterday, leads to the reprobate mind. And here we have part of that right here in verse 21. They forgot the things He did in Egypt. Verse 22, the wondrous works in the land of Ham, terrible things by the Red Sea. Therefore He said that He would destroy them, had not Moses His chosen stood before Him in the breach. Now, if you'll recall, in Exodus chapter 32, God's ready to completely get rid of these people. That was the story of the calf. Remember the golden calf that Aaron made? Exodus 32, 1 through 6 tells us about that. Well, in the 32nd verse of that chapter, Moses goes before the Lord and says, if you're going to destroy this people, destroy me too. And just blot me out of the book. Because if you're not going to honor your promise, and if you're not going to, do that, then I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And so Moses stands for the people before God, which is a wonderful example of intercessory prayer. These people didn't deserve for Moses to stand for them, but he did, because he knew the Lord loved them. And he knew the Lord would save them. And so he stands and just reminds the Lord, not that God had forgotten, But he stands there as the intercessor, takes the promise, and stands before the Lord and says, do this for your name's sake. And so the Lord does. Yet they despised the pleasant land. And we're going to go on to the land of Canaan, and they're going to reject that as well. Well, we'll see more about that next week. I hope you'll join me then on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.